We are not afraid. We will live for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will live for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will dance for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. We were not afraid. We are not afraid. We will fight for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will love for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made. One more time. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will live for liberation, 'cause we know why we were made.
Thank you, Brian. I'd like to invite Eli to the microphone. I was so impressed with Eli's reading that they did at the Southwest Unitarian congregation last couple Sundays ago that I asked them to do it here, and it's about mending, which is really what this is about.
All right, can y'all hear me? Yes. Alrighty, so as Don mentioned, this is from a service at our church from a few Sundays ago called The Art of Mending. This summer, I had a new coworker with a pair of hands that was riddled with holes from years of wear and tear. As a way to cultivate a relationship with them, I offered to mend some of those holes for their birthday. I darned some spots, added new fabric to others, sewed on a new button, and did a little embroidery of a tomato on the back pocket. I was so nervous about how they would receive it. I didn't buy them anything new, which we're so often told is the best way to give gifts, right? When I gave them the mended pants, they were overjoyed because they knew what I was trying to say. I'm putting my time and energy to caring for this item to show you that I want to put my time and energy into caring for you. I originally learned to sew so that I could reduce my contribution to the massive waste, human rights abuses, and carbon emissions that the textile industry is responsible for. Mending and repurposing clothes is one very small but tangible way that I can reject consumerism and oppressive systems that profit from it. After doing it for a while, I found that I enjoyed the intentionality and thought that went into sewing and mending clothes. When I mended clothes, I'm cultivating a relationship with the item I am mending and with the person I'm mending it for. Nurturing our relationships is crucial if we are to strengthen the fraying ties that bind us together through division and uncertainty. There's a concept in environmental studies called ecosystem fragmentation that I first heard of in David Common's The Song of the Dodo, where it's explained using the metaphor of a woven rug. Imagine you have a beautiful woven rug. Now cut it up into 36 pieces. At the end, you are not left with 36 tiny rugs. You are left with 36 pieces of fraying, unraveling fabric. In the context of ecosystems, habitats that get broken up into many small pieces suffer from a loss of biodiversity, interrupted migration, and other problems. Related to this is a concept called atomization. Atomization refers to the idea that larger units in society, like families or neighborhoods, have been broken down to the smallest unit, the individual, such that most people feel a sense of isolation from one another. Let's put these two together. Picture each of us as one tiny square of that giant rug called humanity that has been cut up into a million tiny pieces, each left with fraying edges bound to unravel unless they are stitched back together. This fraying and unraveling that we feel has serious implications for the way we live our lives. Feelings of isolation and loneliness have long been identified by philosophers such as Weber, Marx, and Arendt as crucial to the rise of totalitarian regimes that seek to perpetuate oppressive systems. To combat this unraveling and oppressive systems it facilitates, we must then do what we can to stitch the rug of humanity back together. As Bell Hooks teaches in her book All About Love, love is the primary way we end domination and oppression. A just world and a loving world are one and the same. A world where our fraying edges have been bound together, a world where every single person is treated with dignity and respect, a world where no one is forced to starve. Gathered here today, I see people who are committed to fighting for a world free from domination and oppression, where we live in loving community with one another. May we choose love in our actions each day as we work to tie ourselves to one another and continue the fight for a just world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will do a little reading of something I wrote recently. It's called The Irony of Feast or Famine. Feast or famine usually refers to times of plenty versus times of scarcity, but not at the same time. Like, we feast today and you starve today. That is why we invite others to join us for our Thanksgiving feast, deliver meals to the less fortunate on this national holiday, or declare a tax deduction to businesses that throw free turkeys at the poor. Guilt abatement is not harm reduction. However, it just lets our consciences rest while we fill our bellies. The poor will still be poor the day after and experience food insecurity next week. You work hard at your job or school and deserve a feast day, you may say. True, but so do those who are not so lucky. Good jobs and education are out of reach for millions of U.S. Americans. Charity won't stop the strife. That will require a major policy shift from our government to redirect our economic resources away from militarism and towards sustainability. Our misplaced priorities starve more than 140 million impoverished here in the U.S. As we spread the dining cloth and share the plenty here in our nation, let's remember the hungry on the other side of U.S. bombs. Bombs that our government supplies more readily than food or medical assistance. Famine is a byproduct of war. While Saudi Arabia continues to hold U.S. weapons over the Yemeni resistance fighters, more than 17 million Yemenis face starvation. UN sanctions monitor agree that accusations are credible that the United Arab Emirates provides military support to the Rapid Support Forces on a warring party in Sudan. Some U.S. lawmakers are seeking to block another weapon shipment to the UAE, totaling $1.2 billion. Sudan is now among the top 4 countries in the world with the highest prevalence of global acute malnutrition. For 50 days, Palestinians in northern Gaza have faced increasing chances of survival, as reported by the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, saying that any attempts to deliver food aid have been denied by the Israelis. OCHA, the United Nations office, also reported that a rapidly increasing number of people are facing extreme food insecurity in central and southern Gaza. Apartheid Israel's unsubstantiated allegations against the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, known as UNRWA, are being used to fuel the apartheid state's genocidal campaign in Gaza, Palestine. Since 1950, the UN Relief and Works Agency has provided relief to Palestinian refugees by providing food and infrastructure where Israel lapsed in its responsibility to do so. Haiti, another example of a famine, has had more than its share of political turmoil, ecological devastation, disease, poverty, and Western influence. Nearly 6,000 people in Haiti are starving, with nearly half the country's population of more than 11 million people experiencing crisis of hunger or worse. If you think war is inevitable, it's only in your head. Our nation and our world have seen a history of war. We have also witnessed hundreds of successful nonviolent campaigns waged throughout history, from labor strikes to boycotts and actual despots overthrown. Remember the Montgomery bus boycott. Nonviolence works. War doesn't. Thank you very much. I'd like to call up our next speaker. And unfortunately, Mark, I need a copy of the agenda for today. Come forward.
Good. Next time I'm going to bring a tripod.
We'll do a song.
Good
idea. Next speaker. Thank you very
This
much.
is Facebook Live is where this is going. I can hold the sign back if you want. Okay, thank you.
This one is ceasefire. Ceasefire, ceasefire. Our children are dying. It can't get more dire. Ceasefire, ceasefire. The voice of peace must keep getting higher. Ceasefire, ceasefire. Our children are dying. It can't get more dire. Ceasefire, ceasefire. The voice of peace must keep getting higher. Ceasefire, ceasefire. Our children are dying. It can't get more dire. Ceasefire, ceasefire. The voice of peace must keep getting higher. Ceasefire, ceasefire. Our children are dying. It can't get more dire. Ceasefire, ceasefire. The voice of peace must keep getting higher.
If you would be so kind to come forth and tell us a little bit about Gaza and the fast for Gaza, which began last December. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. The Cleveland Nonviolence Network initiated the fast for Gaza to express the urgency for a permanent ceasefire in Palestine. The rolling fast, as you know, began on December 22nd, 2023. People in Ohio and beyond have pledged to join the fast. 3 Northern Ohioans, including a sister of St. Francis in Tiffin, Ohio, and 2 Greater Clevelanders will fast from solid food. 1 individual is on the 3rd day of their fast. Again, this is from setting some context from last year. The Gaza Strip's 2.2 million people are facing famine and disease while the Israeli bombardment and shelling continue. The U.S. has blocked ceasefire resolutions in the United Nations and continues to arm Israel at $3.8 billion annually. Efforts to convince federal legislators to demand a permanent ceasefire have been ignored. Integrated Food Security Phase Classification Global Partnership on December 21st, 2023 reports the entire population in the Gaza Strip, about 2.2 million people, is classified in Phase 3 or above, crisis or worse. This is the highest share of people facing high levels of acute food insecurity that the IPC initiative has ever classified for any given area or country. Fasting for cause is a non-violent method to express commitment in spiritual practice and as an act of political protest, to provoke an awakening in others, and in ourselves, usually with the objective of achieving a specific goal, such as policy change. This is from the United Nations Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs as an update. Heavy rains hit the Gaza Strip on November 25th, marking the onset of the winter season and further worsening people's vulnerability amid limited response capacities. The heavy rains are estimated to affect over 1.6 million people living in makeshift shelters across the Gaza Strip, with thousands of displaced families living in tents along the coast of southwest Gaza, being particularly affected by flooding and rising seawater. According to preliminary assessments by humanitarian partners, about 7,000 families residing along the shoreline were affected by recent rains, with thousands of tents flooded, belongings destroyed, and shelters damaged. This has been particularly the case in the Al-Mawasi area, which hosts several hundred thousands of displaced people. In Deir Abala, a partner managing 19 sites, reported that 60 shelters were destroyed and 120 were damaged at 2 shelter sites. Adding that flooded roads and pathways have created significant access challenges and resulted in further displacement of some families to nearby sites. Moreover, an assessment by OCHA in the southern area of Al-Qarara seaport in Khan Yunis, where more than 600 tents were reported to have been flooded by high tides, showed an urgent need for shelter and non-food items, such as tents and clothing, as well as food assistance.
Thank you, Ian. We're just going to switch the program a little bit. We're going to hear from Jonathan in a moment about Haiti, and then first we're going to have Michael do a poem. Thank you. So I'm going to read from Mohammed al-Hamiri, a Yemeni who was imprisoned in Guantanamo Bay prison from 2002 to 2016, and Witness Against Torture. And this poem, this reflection on his part, is what we use to create an action in D.C. To pursue the goal of closing Guantanamo Bay prison and releasing all those who are still detained there. There are 16 Muslim men still there who are cleared for release and not released, and then there's a total of 30 Muslim men there still detained. So I want you to join me in a call and response. Repeat the words I'm going to read from Mohammed al-Hamiri, a Yemeni. And particularly we are sensitive to Yemen now and the distress that we're in. That country is a function of the U.S. supplying so much of the support for the Saudis, just as an incredibly distressed country under that responsibility on our part. So I'm going to read it aloud, and I'll ask you to say the same and join me. And so this is Mohammed al-Hamiri's reflection on when he was in prison and his desire to have a release. I watch the sunset in the hope that one day it will extinguish. I watch the sunset in the hope that one day it will be extinguished. Say it back to me. I watch the sunset in the hope that one day it will extinguish. This blazing fire inside my heart. Blazing fire inside my heart. And hope that maybe it will reveal a secret. And hope that maybe it will reveal a secret that would wipe away my tears. That would wipe away my tears.
when I discover that it is pointing to the horizon, when I discover that it is pointing to the horizon, to tell me that it wants to leave, to tell me that it wants to leave, and not be here to witness what destiny, has in store for me. I realized that he was saying hope was dead. I realized that he was saying hope was dead. But I kept whispering to the stars. And still I do. So that they can be witnesses to my truthfulness. My last breath will show loyalty to them. And when they walk along my path, my soul will float with my shadow. Muhammad al-Amiri in his own words.
I'd like to call Jonathan up to. Molly's going to do that for us today. So I'd like to call Molly up to tell us a little bit about Haiti.
Thanks, Don. The United States passed the Monroe Doctrine in 1823, which says that the U.S. American continents are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European power. The declaration, meant to keep Europe out of the continent, has justified U.S. interventions in the region. More than 20 years later, the murder of President Bilbrun Guillaume Sam offered the United States the perfect rationale to invade Haiti. On the same day as Sam's assassination in 1915, Woodrow Wilson authorized the American warship, the USS Washington, to invade Haiti. The U.S. occupied Haiti until 1934. During that occupation, U.S. officials altered Haiti's constitution to allow foreigners to become landowners. That change also gave the United States control of Haiti's customs agency and their finances. Racial discrimination and segregation were the norm in the U.S. South at the time, and most U.S. Marines sent to Haiti were Southerners, accustomed to Jim Crow. This Southern influence among the U.S. Marines played a big role in Haitian history. During the occupation, the United States picked only light-skinned Haitians to serve as presidents. And after 19 years in the country, the U.S. left behind a racially divided society that remains intact today. The United States also trained the Haitian military ideologically to defend U.S. interests. These forces eventually engineered many coups against Haitian leaders who were popular with locals but rejected by the United States. Between 1946 and 1950, under the presidency of Dumarçais Estimé, Haiti enjoyed political and social stability. However, in 1950, Paul Eugene Magloire, trained during the U.S. occupation, overthrew Estimé and changed Haiti's political directory. Magloire established a corrupt political regime, and then the army provided support for U.S.-backed Papa Duvalier. From his presidential election in 1957 to the establishment in 1959 of his dictatorship. In 1959, Duvalier created the Tontons Macoutes, a paramilitary group trained by the U.S. Marines that killed more than 60,000 Haitians. This regime, led by Papa Doc's son, John Claude, after his death in 1971, lasted until 1968. Between the years of 1991 and 2004, President John Bertrand Aristide, who won over Haitians with his anti-imperialism, was overthrown twice by the Haitian military. On September 29, 1991, the Army, with CIA help, removed him from power for his nationalistic views and for his attempts to hold accountable powerful business leaders with strong ties to Washington. On October 15, 1994, amid huge protests, the Bill Clinton administration restored Aristide to power after Washington coerced him to sign the Accord de Paris, an agreement to reinforce the implementation of market-oriented reform policies in Haiti that reduce local influence over the economy. Aristide was forced to privatize social services and public institutions, and he had to facilitate the entry of foreign agricultural goods into the Haitian market. These moves undermined the economy and compromised Haiti's social development. In 2000, Aristide again won the presidency, but in a February 2004 coup engineered by Washington and Paris, overthrew him once more. Under foreign influence, Haitian politicians have been unable to develop a stable society for their fellow citizens. Because of their lack of vision and their erroneous conception of political power, they have given powerful transnational forces the opportunity to shape Haiti's political leadership. Both Democratic and Republican U.S. politicians have imposed on Haitian society a political leadership supportive of U.S. interests but noxious for any nation-building project on the Caribbean island.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to hear from Jan, who has a poem.
Actually, the topic.
Greetings, I'm Jan Jalic, and I'm a member of the DSA, and just like everyone else here, I am here to remind everyone that while we're shopping, bombs are dropping, and famine wreaks havoc in Gaza, Sudan, Haiti, Yemen, and most of this is at the fault of the United States government. To that end, I am here to read a new poem written by myself. I'm looking for people in Gaza. I'm looking for Christians in Gaza. Saint Nick is my name. I'm looking for Christians in Gaza. That's what I proclaim. I'm looking for Christians in Gaza. How many can I see? I'm looking for Christians in Gaza. I promised them oranges and nuts to eat. I'm looking for churches in Gaza, so few are left to be. I'm looking for churches in Gaza, and those are wonderful to see. I'm looking for Muslims in Gaza. I want to hear them say the Shahada. I'm looking for Muslims in Gaza. I hope they were not lost to the new Nakba. I'm looking for mosques in Gaza. I want to see the beauty of Omari. I'm looking for mosques in Gaza. I know it got bombed with the fury of one from a war. I'm looking for children in Gaza. For the children I have gifts. I'm looking for people in Gaza, but thousands were killed by Zionists. I'm looking for people in Gaza. How many can I see? I'm looking for people in Gaza. I hope they're not all dead in front of me. I'm looking for people in Gaza. Saint Nick is my name. I'm looking for people in Gaza. Krampus also feels my shame.
Thank you, Jan. I'd like to ask David to come forward and tell us about Sudan.
On October 2024, 130 women in Al Jazeera State, Central Sudan, reportedly committed mass suicide to avoid being raped by the RSF. Since then, news of women committing suicide by drowning themselves in the Nile have flooded social media. Al-Karib and her colleagues corroborated several cases of women killing themselves in the river rather than being raped, as well as other cases of women drinking local hair dye after being raped by RSF. in front of their male family members in one of the Al Jazeera villages. Al-Qarib noted that the rapes and massacres in El Fasher, in North Darfur, and in Al Janina, in West Darfur, left hundreds of women and teenage girls suffering from physical agony, injuries, and trauma. More recently, Dominique Isabel Hyde, Director of External Relations for the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, reported that when 180 Sudanese attempted to flee from El Jamina, almost all were murdered, and most of the women were raped. Of the 17 people that survived the massacre, 1 woman died in childbirth, and 6 women committed suicide, leaving only 10 that arrived safely in Chad. Even when Sudanese refugees reach relative safety in neighboring Chad, many women and girls are sexually exploited and abused by the men sent to protect them. The Associated Press recently reported allegations that humanitarian workers and local security forces have sexually exploited them in Chad's displacement sites, offering money, easier access to assistance and jobs. Nimat Ahmadi, the founder and director of the Darfur Women Action Group, highlighted in Security Council in April and in November the failure of the international community to protect the women of Sudan against sexual violence, leaving them without option or hope for protection. As the UN promised when it adopted the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, it must recommit to the protection of women and girls and ensure accountability for perpetrators of crimes against them. The Security Council can do this, Samadi says, by calling on all parties to stop targeting civilians and to stop all rapes and other sexual violence. She urged the Council to make all forms of violence and gender-based violence an explicit criterion for opposing sanctions and central to all criminal accountability processes. Finally, she also urged the Council to demand the full and meaningful participation of Sudanese women in all processes regarding the future of Sudan. As for the rest of the world, let us unite to stop rape and other sexual violence against women, girls in Darfur, in the rest of Sudan, and everywhere where women pay the price of war. When such protection of civilians and the pursuit of justice and accountability prevail in Sudan, women and girls will choose survival over suicide. They will have hope for a future where their dignity and worth as human beings and the sanctity of their lives as civilians are preserved.
Thank you, David. We're going to have one more song here, then we'll walk over to the Federal Building. Whether J.D. Vance is in the office or not, we don't know, but we'll do a photo up there and do some more readings. And when we do our photo, we'll send it to our senator. So with some other words. And further speeches will be commencing over there. I give you Brian. Thank you.
We'll do one more song by the Peace Poets before we start walking. Our whole soul knows the truth. Our whole soul knows the truth. Our children have the right to live just like you. Our whole soul knows the truth. Our children have the right to live just like you. Our whole soul knows the truth. Our children have the right to live just like you. Our whole soul knows the truth. Our children have the right to live just like you. One more time. Our whole soul knows the truth. Our children have the right to live just like you.
We'll pack stuff up and walk over. If everyone can join us for that, you're all good. Thank you for bury the coal.
Hey, thank you, guys.
Oh, no, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, this is the Facebook Live broadcast for Cleveland Peace Action. We're getting ready to head over to the Federal Building where we'll read some requests, also known as demands, of J.D. Vance. We'll be in his office and continue the broadcasting from there in probably about 10 minutes or so.